Hello, and welcome to OnPoint, a podcast by Oak Street Funding, where we sit down with industry leaders to bring insights to the topics that you want to hear about. I'm your host today, Jay Douglas, Vice President of Strategic Markets here at Oak Street Funding. Now, let's get on point. Today, I'm joined by Steve Blake, Senior Managing Advisor at Evans May Advisory, and Owen Pryor, Managing Advisor at Evans May Advisory. And today, we're going to be discussing state of accounting in 2026, how to differentiate to attract and retain talent, how CPAs can utilize AI and other technology, and more. Steve and Owen, thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
To get started, can you tell us about Evans May and what you do there?
Yeah, sure. So, one of our things is we're not a traditional CPA firm. We still do the compliance work, but we focus more on the advisory side, hence the name Evans May Advisory. So we always refer to ourselves as a tax and accounting advisory firm. So we really focus on the planning, the strategy. How can we help our clients save tax money, minimize taxes, increase cash flow? So we like to spend a lot of our time just working with our clients, talking with our clients, and figuring out what they've got going on so we can help implement some strategies. Owen, you want to add something to that?
Sure. I think there was just an intentional approach to the name, the advisor part of our name, the advisory, because it is something that we take very serious, and we want to be a profit center as best we can for our clients. We're not a compliance shop. So that's what and we do it in a number of ways. We like to at least meet with our clients quarterly and really try to walk alongside them throughout the year because we feel like that's the best way to add true values. You have to know your clients. You have to understand what season of life they're in. And that's what we really pour our time into.
We literally started with a blank Word document and said, what does a CPA firm absolutely have to do? We came up with like 7 things. And then we thought through, well, how do most traditional CPA firms do it? But is there a better way of doing it? And so a lot of what we identified, like Owen mentioned, there's just so much wasted time and motion. And when you think about why CPA firms do the things they do, well, that's because it's how we've always done it. They've got a system, a software, a process in place. They've got a number of clients, a number of employees to try and change something. People, as much as some people like change, CPAs do not like change. So they're still doing practices that were started in the 1950s. And so that creates a lot of inefficiency. So when we looked at the things that a CPA firm has to do, we looked at it and said, what is the most efficient way of doing that thing, right? We don't care how we've done it before, what's worked well for us. Let's start from scratch as though we know nothing about this industry and try to think about it like we're an outsider. What is the most efficient way of doing everything that we absolutely have to do?
Wonderful. Well, thank you for that overview. What are you seeing in the current state of accounting, and what do you see coming in the future for accounting?
So the accounting industry is in a real conundrum right now. So when you think about what's going on in the accounting industry, a lot of baby boomers are starting to retire. They're selling their firms. There's been a lot in the news lately about the industry where there are a lot fewer people coming into the industry to the point that many states have actually changed the requirements to get a CPA license to make it significantly easier to get one, to try and entice more people to come into the industry. What that does is it creates this squeeze on that middle generation. Those people in their 30s and 40s have been doing it for a while. Their leadership teams are leaving. You don't have new people coming in. And there's more and more work to be done every year. It gets more complicated. There's more clients, more people starting businesses. So there's this real squeeze on the industry. And what that's done is created this like assembly line mindset within a lot of CPA firms. Hey, I've got 1,000 tax returns. I've got to get out. I can't do anything but sit at my desk. I'm going to send them an electronic request for information. They can send that back electronically. I'm going to have somebody prepare the return. I'll review it electronically. We'll send it to them electronically. And now I'll have time to talk to a client. I just got to get these returns done. So it creates this assembly line mindset. But the problem with that is clients want that interaction. They crave that interaction. They want those advisory services. That's why when you look at the statistics in our industry, the advisory side of our industry is the fastest growing service line over the last several years. Clients want you to talk to them. They want to meet with you face to face. We have clients, sometimes I had one today, a guy just randomly showed up in our office because he was in the area and had a question. they want to be able to talk to us. And if you're so overwhelmed that all you can do is crank out tax returns, you're not having those conversations with your clients. And that's where it's been fairly easy for us since we started this practice to pick up a lot of clients from neighboring firms in the area because those other firms are just way overwhelmed.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would think if you look at the industry as a whole, part of why we're in this situation is when we thought about joining forces and doing this, we had both spent time at small mom and pop all the way up to the 8th largest firm in the U.S. And so we saw a lot of good ways to do it, a lot of, maybe disorganized ways to do it. But we really kind of pulled apart the CPA profession and identified those pressure points and put it back together in a unique little deliverable. And what we've done a lot in where the industry is lacking is there's so much wasted emotion. So we've been intentional about studying the industry, looking back at our experiences, and then pulling it apart again and putting it back together. And then all of that time we've harvested, that's allowed us to put it back into the clients, which is the true essence of being a CPA, is you're supposed to be that trusted advisor. Like there's CPAs that probably know more than some people's spouses, so that's what we're trying to bring back to life, because right now, again, the profession is on, we refer to it as a Titanic. Most firms in our industry are like the Titanic. They know the iceberg is right there. They just don't know how to course correct. So
Thank you for sharing all that. And I'm going to press you a little bit more on that. And what you said was operational efficiency is something that differentiates you, as well as just a better client experience. What would be something else that would differentiate Evans May?
So, it's operational efficiency, it's the better client experience, but it's the things that we do for our clients. So one of our things that we provide is what we call our white glove service. And so think of it, if you're familiar with the concept of a family office. We don't do everything that a family office does, but we're kind of going in that direction with our advisory services. So like, for example, one of the things we do for some of our high-level clients is, and this came from what other firms were doing. So let me start with what other firms do. Traditional CPA firm, you got to pay your taxes, right? Like you got to make a payment to the IRS. How do you do that with a traditional CPA firm? They're either going to hand you a voucher to put a written check with to stick in the mail, or they're going to email that so you can print it out yourself, stick a check with it, and put it in the mail. And oh, by the way, they may or may not tell you need to do it by this date. And if you're doing it close to that date, hey, maybe you should send it certified mail. The really good ones will tell you to send it certified mail, and that's a great experience for most firms. For our clients, we pay it on their behalf out of their bank accounts. So our clients don't have to write a check. They don't have to drive to the post office on the due date and make sure it gets postmarked by that date, or it's going to be late because they got it from a traditional CPA firm at the last minute. Our clients know that we're going to make sure it's taken care of for them, and they're willing to pay a premium so that they don't have those last minute. Like we had a client that she actually sent us a picture of her putting her last paper check in the post office, like at the blue box, putting it in there. She sends the check. She's like, I'm so excited. This is the last time I'm ever going to have to do this. She's like, I've never been excited about taxes before, but the fact that I never have to come back to the post office, I'm so excited about that.
And this was a large, like national, international firm that was charging her premium, and she would get her information the day it was due because she was last in line, because she wasn't as big of a fish as they wanted to take care of. So we're happy to take care of it.
Yeah. Service matters.
Yeah, service matters.
Matters in every aspect. Little bit of a pivot here now. So talent in the CPA space, right? You mentioned at the beginning that attracting and getting talent, it's becoming in short supply.
Yep.
How are you attracting and retaining your employees today?
So I love talking about this because it goes back to kind of those operational efficiencies we were talking about, and what do we absolutely have to do? Well, out of that process, we come up with 7 initiatives that we were going to do this year. 2 of those related to people. One related to, from the operational side, how are we going to make people's lives better? And 2, from a recruiting side, how are we going to get out there and show people that we can be different? Because it was funny when I first started and I was trying to recruit, And I would call people, and as soon as I would mention we were a CPA firm, you could almost hear the click from them hanging up, like, nope, not talking to you. But once I started explaining to people, and this is where the name came from, some of our titles. So like I'm the senior managing advisor, actually. Part of that was to get people in the right headspace, because we don't want people to think of us as a CPA firm, because that puts people in the wrong headspace, especially from a recruiting side. So a lot of what we did was just talking to people and finding out what people are looking for when it comes to an accounting career and what people are not looking for. Now, between the two of us, we've got a lot of experience at these firms we talked about. We kind of know why people don't want to be in the accounting world.
Yeah.
You know, we talked about that squeeze on that middle generation. We're that middle generation. And so we kind of knew what people liked, what people didn't like. So when we were picking up on those operational efficiencies, we identified things that are very frustrating for people in our industry that they hate doing. Nobody wants to do that. So like earlier, we talked about billable hours. We don't have billable hours. We don't record time. You know, when I was with the 8th largest firm in the country, I was probably spending roughly a week every month between recording time, reading other people's time entries, figuring out what to bill clients, talking to clients about their bill because they wanted to talk about why they got billed so much or what they were billed for. So all of this time, probably 40 hours or more a month. So a fourth of my month was spent just dealing with recording time, billing time, and explaining time to clients.
Which is not a value add at all. No client cares that he wasted a week of his month, you know. And I think even at that same firm that we were at, there was a young lady that I worked with. She was an absolute rock star on the operational side. She could do the detail review. She could do a lot. She loved scheduling. But if you tried to ask her to go get into a networking event, she'd rather slap you. Like she had no interest in it. But because of the big firm, they think they know like what's best, they would force these people outside of what they're really good at. And it was just a waste of time. You know, and that's what we're trying to make sure that we're doing is communicating that you can have a career path, that you don't have to feel like you're sacrificing what you actually enjoy. So a lot of times when we're talking to new potential hires, we literally ask them, hey, like, what do you enjoy? Like, how can we make that happen? There's a place for you if you want it, but you got to help us figure out what that looks like, and we'll make that happen. We can put you in that spot. And then we follow up with, okay, do you have any other questions? And most of the time it's when can I get an offer letter?
Right.
Which is unique to our space. And we understand that, and knock on wood, we'll keep that traction going.
So just to add a couple of things to that, you know, the first thing is, Owen kind of alluded to this in what he was talking about. Most traditional CPA firms, there is a mold they want to fit everybody into. You got to do business development. You got to develop staff. You got to be an expert in this. You got to do this. I mean, when I was at that large firm, you know, I had a charge hours budget. These are how many hours I have to spend on client work. I had 8 non-charge hours budgets of all the things that I had to do throughout the year. And everybody had those same budgets. They might have different hours based on what they do, different hours requirements, but everybody had a budget for all those different things that you had to do.
And you get your hand slapped if you weren't tracking it.
Absolutely. If you are hitting every single one of those budgets, you got your hand slapped. So a lot of what we've done is we've kind of told people, look, we want to let people do what they have a passion for doing. We'll find somebody else who has a passion for doing that and a passion for doing that, a passion for doing that. But let's find the right people, not force somebody who wants to do this and make them do this. You know, it's that old thing about training. People always want to train and improve on the things you're weak at rather than let you focus on the things you're really good at. We let people focus on the things they're really good at, and we hire those people. So like, for example, when we talk about business development, like we were at a recruiting event at Indiana University, and a marketing student came up and asked if we would be willing to talk to marketers. Yes, absolutely, because any industry, you can do business development if you're a marketing student. I don't have to have a CPA spend a third of their year trying to bring in new clients. If I can hire somebody that wants to do it full time and do a really great job of it because they're passionate about it. So like, for example, we've got somebody, you know, at the old firms, I was responsible for all my social media, my LinkedIn. I had to post a certain number of things, have a certain number of followers, make all these connections every month. We just hired somebody that manages every social media account for every person in the office. And that's what they spend most of their day doing. And it took all of that off of our plates. And you know what? They do a better job than I ever could.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the things
Wrong.
yeah, the things that she puts out on her social media amaze me every week.
It's interesting that when you talked about the 7 points that you're using to go forward with the firm, and that there's a focus on the employees, and when you take care of the employee,
Absolutely.
it ultimately ends up being that
Yeah.
they're going to take better care of the client,
Right.
which is to your, how you
Yeah,
started, the
absolutely.
client experience.
We don't have a firm. We can't deliver what we're going out to the market and communicating and selling without our team. Our team is the most important thing.
Yeah, our people are our only asset. Software can't run itself. The office can't run itself. People do everything in our professional industry. So we have to have the right people. We have to have people that are passionate. We have to have people that care. And so just to kind of go back, we started to talk about internship programs. So we have a program called our Emerging Advisors Program. So again, trying to get people in the right headspace. You're not an intern. You're an emerging advisor. You're going to be an advisor. Like, this is the mindset we want people in. And so most CPA firms, if they have interns, because not every firm does, but if they have interns, they're basically data entry clerks. They're going to teach them what numbers go where in the software, and they just need them to put a whole lot of numbers in a whole lot of boxes and do it as quickly as they can, and work about 60 hours a week at minimum to do it. So one of the things we found, we got really heavily involved in Indiana University. We're starting to reach out to Ball State and some of the other local colleges. And as we got into Indiana University, one of the things we found is their best and brightest were not doing internships. The reason is because most of them had grants, scholarships, things that required them to be full-time students. They earned those academically. These are the top students at the school. They couldn't do an internship at a traditional firm because a traditional firm requires you to work 60 hours a week and not take any classes. They were going to lose their financial aid. They were going to lose their scholarships, their grants. So I was actually at a panel discussion, and it was me and 4 or 5 other firms. And one of the young ladies, she raises her hand and asks the question, how can you ask me to not take any classes, work 60 hours a week, and delay my graduation? Why would I do that? And to a person, the other CPA firms said, you're going to get great experience, you're going to get your foot in the door with us, and it might lead to a job for you.
Might
lead to a job for you. And she looked at him and she's like, why would I do that? And I raised my hand and I'm like, so for us, you can stay a full-time student. You can work 15, 20, 25 hours a week, whatever works for your class schedule. We don't require our interns, our emerging advisors, to work 60 hours a week. So at these recruiting events, what was great was because we've now been to several of these. And in one of those, we were able to get up in front of the group, and I think they gave each firm 5 minutes or something like that to kind of introduce yourself. So you don't get a lot of time to really get out what you're doing. And then each firm had a table set up around the room, and the room was open until the students were done talking to the firms. And about 2 hours later, I'm kind of looking around. I'm like, man, I still got like 60 kids in my line. I'm looking around. I'm like, where are the other firms? They're all gone. None of the other students wanted to talk to them. They all got in our line eventually. And we ended up breaking up into 2 lines. Each of us had about 30 or 40 students in our line, and we were there for 4 hours.
But they were talking to Steve, and then they come to my line, or they talk to me and then go to Steve's line.
Yeah.
So
it really resonated with them, what we were trying to do. Look, our Emerging Advisor program is an educational program. We actually partnered with IU. They get school credit for working for us. And so we look at it as an educational program because, look, we could go hire high school kids and have them do what we need to do to get the tax returns done with the systems and operations that we put in place. The college kids are our next generation. They are our future assets. We've got to bring in the right kids. And so IU really recognized that. They saw what we were trying to do. Owen's now on the chancellor's,
employer relations.
Yeah, an employer relations board for the chancellor. And so as part of that, because they recognized what we were doing, they send us their top students. They invite us to events and they're like, meet this student. You guys got to talk to these people.
Well, it's amazing what you're doing with attracting new employees, attracting college students. And, once again, that translates into better client experiences down the line, as well as just retaining your employees. Switching gears, though, we had mentioned technology as something that we wanted to get into a little bit. So What are some of the ways accounting professionals are using technology, how they're using AI to enhance their own practices as well as enhancing the client experience?
I would say it's as far as the accounting field, it is such a wide range because there are certain older partners, they don't know how to open a PDF. There are certain folks that still have a 10 key, with a tape, so it's such a wide range. Now, most, regional to decent sized firms, they've got electronic filing, they've got the scanning and then the AI to where it can, read, the documents and get at least that first level data entry input in. But what we're trying to do is, again, try to think outside the box. So what we've done is really kind of taken all the technology, that tech stack, and everything was essentially like on the chopping block. Mm-hmm. So we've enlisted an all-in-one firm management system, essentially, that's also it gives us the ability to track jobs, communicate securely with clients. It tracks communication. A lot of that heavy lifting that, traditional firms, I always think back to when I would send something in for review from a partner and they're like, well, Owen, you didn't, record the sale. Well, where was that in the notes? Well, it's up here. And I forgot to, so
Right.
The return's wrong. It was your fault. Go redo it.
Right.
So we're trying to fix a lot of that. It's really just not efficient, right? And it's not kind to your staff to have to, think in your brain. That's not possible, right?
Right. Well, and part of it was just stepping back and thinking about, how does the world operate today? We all do everything on our phones. There's a mobile app for something. There's a website you can get to from your phone. You do everything on your phone. So we wanted to make sure we were implementing technology that works with how people just do things today. And so, like Owen said, we kind of took the technology stack, the software and everything that we've always used that the firm we were working with had used. And we just said, if we're going to start with a blank slate, there's nothing that says we have to use any of that software. So again, one of our major initiatives, one of those 7, was our tech stack. And we just started from scratch. What are the things we have to do? And we just came up with a list of all the different software things that needed to be done. And then we just started researching within each one of those, and we pulled the team together and we kind of split up. Okay, you guys go look at these 3 or 4 things, and you guys go look at these 3 or 4 things, and come back with something that's come out in the last couple of years. If it's more than 3 years old, we probably don't want to use it. And so what was great is, this practice management system that Owen was talking about is once we found that and what it does, and there were a few in that area, but the one we found really was kind of over the top. It replaced about 12 different software packages, none of which talk to each other. And now everything is in one place. So like, for example, like Owen was mentioning, information being in a partner's head. Well, one of the things that a traditional CPA firm, information from a client is trapped in a text message, an email that went to this person, but this person's working on it. And then they have to share that information. That takes time. Again, we're trying to do things efficiently. This system, in addition to all the other things that I could spend hours talking about, it does our email and our text messages. If a client texts somebody in my office, I can see it on my phone right now.
Wow. Okay. So AI, big topic everywhere. How's AI impacting, or how could it impact your practice? And then just the broader accounting CPA community, how's AI affecting that?
So there are tremendous impacts from AI, and AI in certain areas still needs to get a little better. We actually tested a few programs this year. So AI is great. We talked about being efficient. We talked about wanting to save ourselves time, harvesting that time, putting it back and actually spending time with our clients. AI is great for that, but you got to know how to use it the right way.
Right.
Part of that is programming that to understand what you're trying to do. So you see stories in the news all the time. There was a Big 4 firm that got hit in Australia because they were citing to cases that didn't actually exist.
It's a 262-page document they charged hundreds of thousands of dollars for, and it was just butchered in AI. Like it was
Right.
ChatGPT'd.
Yeah, and we had a client that we picked up. that we actually charged a pretty good premium over what they were paying before. And part of that was because, their previous firm, they would email them a question. 6 weeks later, they'd get an answer. Well, in the meantime, the client kind of got tired of waiting. So they just ChatGPT, put the exact same question in, got the answer, moved forward. Then 6 weeks later, they hear back from the firm with word for word the exact same thing ChatGPT had told them. And then they got a bill for $600 for answering that question.
And they had those little dashes in there. So
That's
no one does that. I've never seen someone do that.
So you've got to know how to use AI the right way. And there are a lot of ways in our industry to use AI. So like, for example, we're using AI to read tax documents, autoflow that information into the tax returns. Again, trying to be efficient. There were AI programs we looked at this year that were in the areas of research, but then also reviewing tax returns. There's some pretty cool programs out there that you can actually load in a PDF of the tax return, and within seconds, it will spit out the review comments and strategic planning opportunities based on looking at what's in that tax return. Something that would take a human being half hour, an hour to go through, check the numbers, like all of that. There's an AI program that'll do it for you in seconds. But it wasn't quite there yet. And so that's why we haven't gone to it. But I'm sure at some point in the future it will get there. On the tax research side, it's great, but you got to know it's not accurate. It doesn't put things in context. It doesn't have your mindset. Unless you want to write out a paragraph prompt telling exactly what you're trying to do and why, it'll get better. But most people don't. They want to throw in a couple of words and have it spit something out. And then, especially if you're trying to get to a case site, a regulation, a piece of actual guidance from the IRS, well, what you told it was to give you a site. You didn't tell it had to be a real case. Now, go tell it has to be a real actual case that really does say this, and you'll get a different answer. But most people don't think to do that. So it's all in how you use it. It's all in how you program, because you can create your own little bots. And if you tell it your entire world of knowledge is the Internal Revenue Code, well, you're going to get fairly good answers based on that. But you're also not going to get complete answers based on that. So it's all in how you use it. It's getting really close to what I would like it to be and how I want to use it. And so we've implemented some things, and maybe over the next year or two, we'll implement more of that.
Right. And I would add just a couple things with AI, especially on the research side. You have to be so specific, and you have to remember that you're the driver, because if you ask a question that's a vague tax question, well, our tax law sometimes is black and white, but there's a lot of gray area, and tax law changes year over year. We saw a new tax bill get signed in the middle of the year, right? And some of it went into effect on January 19th. And we were cracking jokes that we thought it was because some senator had, a buddy put in a bunch of like equipment, or maybe a rival on January 18th. It's like, haha, you can't get access to this depreciation. But it was actually when it was introduced to Congress. So that was the odd date. But then the other part is the overuse of AI. And I think that's the part that technology, outsourcing work overseas, that's what is going to hurt our profession, is the overuse of AI, the overuse of not having people that they can have a conversation with, and I think that's a testament to why we've had the traction we've had, is because we've slowed down and had those one-on-one calls, or 2 people from our team or 3 people, because we're not so, scared to spend time on a client. We slow down and we do the right thing for that client. If that means I'd have to bring in Steve or our tax technical guru, like I don't hesitate. I'm like, hey guys, I need 15 minutes of your time. Let's pour our experience into this situation and come up with a creative solution.
And part of it with AI is you have to have that experience, because when you're reading what AI came up with, you got to know if it makes sense or not.
Right.
And so a lot of times, especially as we were trying to summarize the new bill that came out, we were trying to use AI to help us save some time by summarizing that for us. And one of the things we found as we were running through the summary it created was, we told it to summarize the provisions within that bill. Well, how many drafts of that bill were there? Because AI used all of them, because we asked it to summarize that bill. So a lot of those provisions didn't make it in the actual final signed act. And so we're reading through it going, that wasn't part of it. That wasn't in there.
And this was not Chat GPT or Copilot. This was an AI program specific to our industry, and it got it wrong.
Right.
So that's how you have to be so cautious and careful.
Right.
And I mean, and I'll use AI sometimes to like, hey, I've got, an email I need to get back to, help me come up with a rough draft. And I'm like, no, stop. That is flat wrong. And it's like, if you're not paying attention, you're just copying and pasting. Like, no, you have to be the author. You can help. ChatGPT can help, or Copilot can help edit and maybe make it pretty. But you need to be the author, because that's what people are paying you for. They're not, if they want to go do their taxes on TurboTax and use ChatGPT, good luck. But they can do that. Like, that's not what we want to present.
So we've covered today client experience, the unique differentiators that you're applying to attract clients. We've covered attracting and retaining talent. We went a good amount into AI and technology. But as we wrap up here, are there any additional closing thoughts you'd like to share for the broader CPA audience, as well as clients maybe listening?
So I think one thing I would say, well, a couple of things. Let's talk about it from a client perspective for a minute. Try to, and again, because clients don't know our industry, they don't know what we do, they don't know how we do it. The big part of that is find somebody that works with you the way you want to work with your CPA. Everybody's different. There are firms that are still out there that are doing paper files and doing everything on paper. And for a lot of clients, that's great because they don't do computers. They might not even have a computer. So find a CPA that works with you the way you want to work with you. And so part of how we're doing that is because we recognize that with our clients. So even though we're doing a lot with technology, a lot with AI, our practice management system has a mobile app. I kind of talked about the mobile apps earlier, but our clients can do everything with us through a mobile app. They can sign their engagement letter. They can pay their bill. They can upload documents. They can sign their tax returns. Every single thing can be done through a mobile app. But I had a client come to me the other day who wasn't receiving our emails because it was going to their junk folder, and they didn't know how to stop getting it going to the junk folder. They didn't know how to fix that. So they literally just stopped by our office in the middle of the day, and I spent 20 minutes with them helping them fix their settings on their email so that they start getting our emails again. And we've got a lot of clients that, some of them are elderly, some of them not so much, that they like paper. So we have something in our tracking system as to whether or not they want electronic, paper, or both. And we just give them the option. You tell us how you want us to interact with you, and we'll do it that way. So find a CPA that works with you the way you want to be worked with, that provides the services that you want to receive. So if you've got a certain idea in your head of what you want out of that relationship, then find somebody that provides that. We've got outsourced CFOs on our staff. So we've got clients where we do cash flow projections and budgets and all of this stuff on the accounting side. But if you have a small business, you don't care about that. But if you're just an individual that wants a 1040, well, we do that as well. So find the CPA that provides those services, because if you do own a small business, you don't want somebody that just does 1040s, that just does those individual tax returns. You want somebody who can help you with a budget, help you with a cash flow projection, make sure your bank account never goes negative. Like, you want that in those services. So find somebody that provides those services, works well with you, you have a good relationship with, and it makes it so much easier to work with them.
Right. It's compliance versus advisory.
Right.
That's the big differentiator.
Right. Right.
So,
And just what I wrote down here, and you've touched upon it so much in different ways, but tailoring the experience to the client's needs.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that goes to attracting and retaining top talent as well. And it's an intentional approach to be people focused.
Right.
And that's what we're trying to plan our.
Yeah, so that's a big part of the software. That's a big part of our operational efficiencies. That's a big part of how we interact with our clients. We want to be so extremely efficient. Part of that is the idea, like if you're working at a traditional CPA firm, and I'll just give you a few examples. The fall of 2024, there were weeks that I worked 130, 140 hours in a week because there was a deadline coming up. I think in 2024, if you went back and looked at the numbers, I was somewhere near 3,000 hours that I worked. Like, to have a life in that kind of an environment. Like, that's why a lot of people are leaving. Nobody wants to do that. You can't get a 20-year-old to go, yep, that's what I want to do with my life.
Right.
No, nobody wants to do that. So a big part of what we've been doing too is not only from the client side, but from those experienced hires side. So we've hired people away from large regional and national firms because they really like what we're doing, because we're still in the process of implementing all of this because we just started doing it like in February, so not even a year at this point. But so not all of it's there yet, but our goal is that even during tax season, our people work Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. There's no weekends, there's no evenings, definitely no Sundays. At a traditional CPA firm during tax season, it is 7 days a week, 15 to 20 hours a day. And we just, that is not how you're going to attract and retain the highest level of talent. So we have people, and you can see the change in them from when I interviewed them when they were at a traditional CPA firm to being a month in working for us. Just the way they act is so completely different because they're so much happier.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Well, I want to thank you both. Really insightful. I think our listeners learned a lot. I know I did. So I just want to say thank you for taking the time to do this.
Certainly welcome.
And thank you all for listening to OnPoint, a podcast by Oak Street Funding. I'm Jay Douglas. Tune in next time when we sit down with Jeff Arnold of Right Source Insurance to discuss his growth journey. You can join us wherever you listen to podcasts as we get on point. Don't forget to rate, review on Spotify, like and subscribe on YouTube, and follow us on LinkedIn and Instagram for more insights and behind-the-scenes content. You can find us at onpoint.wit.osf. We'll see you next time.